Hello and welcome to Ewe University. I'm Dr. Kelly. Well, we just finished the last week of classes and this coming week is final exams. I think everyone is excited for summer, including me. We are actually having a beautiful day out today, so maybe summer weather is on its way too. I'm not teaching a summer class this year, so it'll be a nice little break. Although I do have a long to-do list that I hope to get through this summer. It's things like finishing up painting around the house, having a yard sale to clear out a bunch of stuff from our basement, and things like that. At my lab meeting last week, it was our last lab meeting of the semester, and we always have a pizza party, and I buy pizza, and we kind of celebrate our accomplishments for the semester. And this time I got pizza, and we did something a little different. We played dog bingo. This is a cute game that I've wanted to get since Christmas time, and I finally ordered it from Amazon. It is a bingo game, but instead of letters and numbers, the players' cards are filled with a grid of different dog breeds. And yes, the names of the breeds are right on the card underneath the picture of the dog, in case you don't know all of the dogs by picture alone, which we did not. So we played it where the first winner was whoever got a regular bingo first, like filled up a row or a column or a diagonal. But then we kept on going until someone filled up their entire card, and that was the dog bingo champion of the universe. So anyway, it was kind of fun and different, and we got to talk about the different dogs that people had, so it started some interesting conversations. As I said, this coming week is finals, and then graduation is on Saturday. I'm going to be the academic reader again, which means that I'll be reading all of the students' names into the microphone as they walk across the stage at graduation for the College of Arts and Sciences. This is only one of our 4 graduation ceremonies. Just the College of Arts and Sciences takes about 2 hours, so that's a lot of names. And that's what I'll be doing on Saturday afternoon. This week, I received my Plucky Knitter subscription yarn. I have been doing this subscription now for a few years, and I really love Plucky yarn. My subscription is for the Primo fingering base, which is MCN or Merino Cashmere Nylon. It is fabulous yarn, and it comes every other month for my subscription. For a while there, we were getting a lot of neutral colors, like a lot of grays and taupes and browns, and I was wishing they would send some more colorful yarns. And this month, I love this color. It's this minty green, and the colorway is called Mermaids. I think it is the perfect color for spring, and this minty green seems to be the in color this year. Now, I always think I'm going to make a shawl with my Plucky yarn. These skeins have 385 yards in them, so I would definitely need a second skein for a full-size shawl. So I need to find a coordinating skein and figure out a shawl pattern to make. And I'm going to get around to doing that one of these days, maybe this summer. Anyway, so that's what I'm thinking with my Plucky yarn. Something crafty that I've been doing this week is making pretty envelopes like these. So I've been sitting down and, for like an hour or so when I have time and making these pretty envelopes. I use double-sided paper, so the inside of the envelope has a pattern as well as the outside of the envelope. So here's the outside, and then you open it up, and here's this, the inside pattern. The paper that I used is Designer Series paper from Stampin' Up! And I just had a bunch of it sitting around that I hadn't used. So I just got out several packages of paper that I hadn't used for other projects yet. And I started using that to make envelopes. It's a great way to use up those leftover papers. And I thought that I would take a couple of minutes to show you real quick how you can make envelopes like this. It's super fast and easy by using an envelope punch board. It looks like this. And this one is again from Stampin' Up, where I get most of my paper crafting supplies. So this is the envelope punch board, and with it you can make envelopes in over 100 different sizes, from tiny 2.5 or 2-inch by 3.5-inch gift card envelopes, all the way up to a big 15 by 21-inch envelope. Now I usually just make the one size that fits these 4.5 by or 4.25 by 5.5-inch cards, like this one I showed last week. And I actually have that size of envelope highlighted in pink on the punch board, so I can quickly remember what I need to do to make that size. The way the punch board works is that first you pull out the little tool for scoring and folding the paper. It's stored in this handy little cutout on the right side of the board. Then you look at the table printed on the top of the board and find the envelope size you want to make. These are all the smaller size envelopes in this table. The larger size envelopes are printed on a separate paper that is still in my box because I don't use them very much. Now the envelope I want to make is for a card that is 4.25 by 5.5 inches, and here's that information. So I want to cut the paper to an 8 by 8 inch square and then line up the left side of the paper with a 3.5 inch mark on the little ruler at the top of the punch board. Okay, so let's do that. I've got some pretty paper here. It is 12 inches square and it's printed on both sides, so both the outside and the inside of the envelope will be decorated. It's got flowers on one side and just some different patterns in orange on the other side. I think I'll put the flowers on the outside of the envelope, and then the inside of the envelope will be this orange pattern. So first I'm going to use my paper cutter to cut it down to 8 inches square. And the nice thing is that the leftover paper is 4 inches wide, and that's the perfect size to use on the front of a card. So I'll keep these leftover pieces, and I could make a matching card with them. All right, so now I have my 8 by 8 inch paper, and the table on the envelope punch said I need to line up the left side of the paper at 3.5 inches from the score line. Here is 3.5 inches, so I'm going to align my paper here, then punch it by pressing down on this little oval button, and I'm going to lightly score it with the scoring tool. Scoring just means that you're marking the paper where it will be folded, and the score line makes it easier to fold the paper cleanly. There is an indented diagonal line on the board that will guide your scoring tool in a straight line and in the correct place. Now for scoring, you want to just use a light touch, because what I found is that if I press down too hard when I'm scoring the paper will actually cut or split when you go to fold it, and you don't want the paper to come apart here, so just press lightly with the scoring tool. Okay, so once you have that first scoring mark in place, then turn the paper 1/4 turn to the right and line up the score line with that little guide that sticks out on the punch board. Once you have that score line in the correct place, then you're going to punch again and make another score line. And you keep turning the paper and punching and scoring until you've done all 4 sides. Now, if you want to, you can round the corners on your envelope, but I don't usually do that. That's completely up to you though. If you want to do that, there is a little corner punch on the outside of the punch board. You simply insert the corner of your paper and then punch, and you'll get a nice rounded corner. Okay, and once you've finished punching and scoring and rounding the corners if you want to, it is time to fold the envelope and glue it together. So you're going to turn the paper so it's in a diamond shape in front of you, with the longer score lines horizontal and the shorter score lines going vertical. Fold up the bottom corner, which will form the middle of the back of the envelope. Then apply adhesive to the edge of the right side and fold it over on top of the middle and press it down. Next, apply adhesive to the other side and fold it over and press it down. Finally, fold that top corner down, but don't glue it because that will form the envelope flap. So this is an example of your completed pretty envelope, and you can see obviously that the outside is decorated with pattern paper, and when you open the envelope flap, you can see the lovely inside pattern, which looks like an envelope liner. Now, it is completely okay to send these beautifully decorated envelopes in the mail. Just make sure the recipient's address is clearly visible on the outside front of the envelope. Sometimes if the paper is really dark colored or has a bright pattern on it, maybe like this, it might be hard to see or read the address. In that case, you would probably want to use a sticker or a stick-on label like this. So you would just put this on the front of the envelope and write the person's address. So by making these gorgeous envelopes, you can really decorate the mail that you send out and bring beauty into the recipient's mailbox. This week I didn't get that much knitting done, but I did work on my sock that I showed you last week. I actually finished the leg on the second sock and knit the heel flap and turned the heel. So now it's to the same place as the first sock. So I just have to do the gusset decreases and knit the foot for both socks. So I would say this project is in junior status at this point. As a real quick reminder, the yarn that I'm using for these socks is Manos del Uruguay Alegria, and it is a 75-25 superwash merino nylon blend. It's fingering weight, and the colorway is called Colombina. It is mostly white yarn with a little bit of blue, red, and gold and black speckles. I really like this speckled yarn and I'm enjoying knitting with it. I've got one sock coming out of the middle of the ball, at the center of the ball, and the other sock I'm using the yarn off the outside of the ball. Now these are plain vanilla socks that I'm knitting top down. My usual sock recipe is to cast on 68 stitches. I think I said 72 stitches last week, but it's really 68 stitches. And then I do about an inch of ribbing at the top. And for these, I did 3x1 ribbing for an inch, and then switched to stockinette stitch and made the leg about 6 inches long before starting the heel flap. The heel flap's 2 inches long, and then I turned the heel. So that's my general sock construction. And I always use a US size 1, which is 2.25 millimeter. These little 9-inch circular needles are my favorites. And that is my knitting for this week. Over the past couple of weeks, I've received several questions from different people about using a niddy knotty. So I thought I would take a few minutes to talk about this interesting tool. Now I actually have 3 niddy knotties in 3 different sizes. This largest one is the one that I've used the most, but then the other 2 I bought to wind smaller skeins of yarn. And this small one, this tiny one, is especially useful for making mini skeins. Now, a niddy knotty consists of a center post and 2 perpendicular arms, one on the top and one on the bottom of the center post. And one of those arms is rotated 1/4 turn in comparison to the other arm. So you see, this is how it looks. The yarn gets wound on the ends of these arms. Now, most niddy knotties are made out of wood, and you can get very simple, inexpensive wooden ones all the way up to luxurious, beautiful woods like cherry. You can also make your own out of PVC pipe and other materials. Now, a niddy knotty has two purposes. One is to wind yarn into a hank, which is that big circle of yarn that gets twisted and folded up together so it doesn't get tangled and it's easier for storing. The second purpose is for measuring yarn. Now, the most popular users of niddy knotties are probably hand spinners. Once you have spun and plied your yarn, you may have a bunch of bobbins full of yarn, and you need to get that yarn off the bobbins so you know how much is there. What's the yardage of your hand spun yarn, and so you can eventually knit with it. The niddy knotty is that handy tool that can turn a bobbin full of yarn into a skein if you don't have a yarn swift or reskeiner that you can use for that. Niddy knotties come in a variety of sizes, as you saw. The most common sizes create circles of yarn with 2 to 3 yard circumference. But you can get small niddy knotties that can make mini skeins with around a 24-inch circumference. Now, it's important to know the length of your niddy knotty so that you can calculate how much yarn you have. And keep in mind that niddy knotties are not super accurate scientific measuring devices, but they will give you a rough estimate of your yarn yardage. One wrap around the niddy knotty will equal about 4 times the length of the center shaft. Now, I got my first niddy knotty, this one, to make hanks of yarn, mostly from my hand spun, but I've also used them to reskein yarn like this one that I originally wound into a yarn muffin to knit from, but then I ended up not doing the project, or I think I frogged this project. So I ended up wanting to put it back into a hank form. Now, like I said, the one that I've used the most is this large one, which will make regular size skeins. And then the 2 smaller ones I've used to make smaller skeins. I have the measurements of each of my niddy knotties on a little sticker underneath one of the arms. So the big one makes skeins of 56 inches in circumference. The medium one makes skeins of 40 inches in circumference, and the small one makes skeins of 28 inches in circumference. And you can see the different size skeins right here. Now, how do you use the niddy knotty to get the yarn into these skeins? Well, to use a niddy knotty, first make sure that the top and bottom arms are at right angles to one another. Grasp the center bar like a baton, take the end of the yarn and hold it over one side of the top arm. Some people like to use a slip knot so that the end stays in place, and you can do that if you want to. Bring the yarn down to the lower arm and wrap it under one side of the arm. Then bring it back up to the other side of the top arm and wrap it over. Bring the yarn down again and wrap it under the other side of the lower arm, and finally back up to the top arm where you started. Continue this process until you've wrapped all of the yarn around the niddy knotty. While you're wrapping, you'll be holding the center bar and moving the whole niddy knotty so that the yarn can get to both sides of the top and bottom arms. When you've finished winding the yarn, it's time to tie off the beginning and the end of the yarn so that the whole thing doesn't come unwound. You'll be tying those ends together, and to do that, find the place where the 2 ends meet. Cross the 2 ends so that one end wraps around the yarn clockwise and the other end wraps around counterclockwise. Then tie those ends together and trim off any excess. You'll also want to place some ties around the yarn so it doesn't get tangled. For the ties, you can just use waste yarn. The best way to keep the yarn from tangling is to put the ties through the yarn in a figure 8 arrangement. Find the place where you want to tie off the yarn, split the yarn in the middle, and insert the scrap yarn so that it's wound through the hank of yarn like a figure 8. Once the yarn is wound around the niddy knotty, you can get an estimate of how much yardage you have. First, measure the length of the center bar of the niddy knotty and multiply that by 4. This will give you the circumference of the hank. On mine, the center bar length is about 14 inches, so 14 times 4 is 56, so each time around this niddy knotty equals 56 inches of yarn. Then pick one side of one arm to count the number of wraps. In this case, I have 111 wraps of yarn around this niddy knotty. Multiply the number of wraps by the circumference that you just calculated. So in this case, I had 111 wraps times 56 inches for a total of 6,216 inches. To convert inches to yards, divide by 36. So for this example, I have 6,216 inches, which equals 172.67 yards. All right, and then when you know how much yardage you have, it's time to take the yarn off the niddy knotty. Before you remove it, make sure you've tied the yarn off in several different places, like I just mentioned. Then remove the yarn from one side of one of the arms and carefully take it off the rest of the niddy knotty. Now, wind the skein by twisting it in your hands until it's fairly tightly twisted. Keep your thumb or finger in each end loop so they remain open. When the yarn is tightly twisted, insert one end into the other and admire your handiwork. You might want to make yourself a tag to attach to your skein so that you remember what the yardage is. So that is how to use a niddy knotty. Now, I don't think this is a necessary gadget for every knitter, but if you need to reskein yarn and you don't have a Swift or a reskeiner, a niddy knotty might be the way to go. Or if you find yourself needing to measure yardage, maybe on some leftover yarn, that might be another reason to pick up a niddy knotty. Or if you want to make mini skeins, one of these tiny niddy knotties would come in handy. Niddy knotties come in a variety of price points. I know that Knit Picks has 2 different sizes and both are under $20 each. So if you're just interested in trying one out without a huge economic investment, that would be a good option. And I'll put a link to the Knit Picks niddy knotties in the description box below so you can check those out if you want to. Of course, you can get way fancier ones that are way more expensive. For something fancy like that, I would probably look on Etsy or just do a Google search and see what is available. So I hope you have enjoyed seeing a little bit about the knitters and spinners tool called a niddy knotty. Today in the classroom, I'm going to be talking about some of the world's cutest sheep. Now, I know that there are a lot of cute sheep in the world, but I think you'll agree that these breeds I'm going to tell you about today might just be the most adorable and charming of all. I will be covering 3 sheep breeds, talking about their background, characteristics, and their wool. So, let's get started. Okay, our first cute sheep breed today is the Kerry Hill. These sturdy, adaptive sheep have distinctive markings that make them look kind of like a panda bear. They are all white except for black patches on their nose, around their eyes, and black ears that are perked up. These sharply defined jet black areas on white fleece make the sheep very unique looking. Their legs are bare of wool and also have black markings on them, and these sheep do not have horns. The Kerry Hill sheep breed was developed in the hills around the small town of Kerry on the border of England and Wales. Records of this breed date back to 1809, and it was once a thriving sheep breed. However, numbers declined in the 20th century, and the Kerry Hill was put on the rare breed watch list until 2006. Today, it's not a particularly common breed, but it's making a comeback, and it's found throughout England, Wales, Ireland, the Netherlands, Germany, and Denmark. It's a medium-sized breed weighing around 120 to 150 pounds. They are able to cope with most weather conditions, having good foraging skills. These sheep are definitely herd animals that stay together as a flock to protect themselves from predators. They sense the presence of danger from several hundred feet away. Their perky ears can twist around to detect potential danger, and they instinctively run away instead of trying to fight. When they do run away, they do so in a winding pattern so they can see what's behind them. Although the Kerry Hill is raised mostly for meat, they do have a nice fleece that is appropriate for spinning into yarn. It is dense, yet lightweight, fine, and white, with a micron count of 26 to 29, which is a medium softness comparable to the wool of Cheviot, Dorset, and Suffolk, if you're familiar with those breeds. And it does have kind of a long staple length of around 4 inches. In yarn, the wool is durable and can be used for garments like socks, hats, mittens, and sweaters, or for household items like blankets and upholstery fabric. Now, I've not been able to get a hold of any Kerry Hill yarn or even fleece or fiber. It seems kind of hard to find here in the US, so I can't show you any yarn in person, but I wanted to include the Kerry Hill in this video because I think they are so cute with their little panda faces and perky black ears. In the next breed, I really feel like we're ramping up the cuteness factor. So let me introduce you to the Old English baby doll Southdowns. These adorable little sheep are descendants of the Southdown breed of sheep, which originated in the southern hills of Sussex County, England. Over the years, they were bred to be larger animals, which is what we know as the modern-day Southdown sheep. Around 1990, a couple of flocks of the original, smaller Southdown sheep were discovered and labeled Old English baby doll Southdown to differentiate them from the larger, modern breed. The baby doll Southdown is a relatively rare breed. They are absolutely adorable though, measuring less than 24 inches tall. Many adults are as small as 18 inches, so they're literally the size of a medium-sized dog. No wonder people want to keep them as pets. They are covered with wool over their whole body, including their legs and face. They really do have a teddy bear appearance, which reminds me of the Ewok in Star Wars movies. Their cuteness is enhanced by the wide shape of their muzzles, making them look like they're smiling all the time. These smiles are part of the classic look of the baby doll Southdown. Baby doll Southdown are polled, meaning no horns, and they're used a lot in petting zoos and visits to schools and nursing homes. Many people use baby doll Southdowns for organic lawn mowing. They're easy to handle because of their small size and gentle disposition, and they don't require as much space as larger sheep, so are feasible for smaller hobby farms. Baby doll Southdowns are naturally sweet-tempered and are curious but wary in new situations. They're especially fond of routine. Because of their strong flocking instinct, they don't do well alone. They thrive on companionship and must be with their own kind or another breed of sheep or goat. Due to this fact, lambs are often only sold in pairs if the buyer does not already have companions for their lamb. Their wool is dense with medium crimp, and according to the Fleece and Fiber Sourcebook, the fiber diameter is about 23 to 29 microns, so again, it's kind of a medium softness. Most fleece is white, but occasionally you'll find gray, black, or a spotted one. It is springy and soft and can be worn next to the skin. Fleeces weigh 4 to 7 pounds, and the staple length is very short, around 2 to 3 inches long, which can make it a little challenging to spin. For spinning, a medium twist and light drafting is recommended. The yarn is great for socks, mittens, hats, and sweaters. Now, I do have some baby doll Southdown yarn, which I got from my friend Kristine, a shepherdess who owns a flock of baby doll Southdown sheep in Missouri. She has an Etsy shop called My Little Sheep, and that is where I bought this yarn. And I'll include a link to her shop in the information box below. This yarn is worsted weight, and I have 200 yards here. It's very springy and bouncy with a lot of elasticity in it, and it's very lightweight. You can see how resilient this yarn is. I can tell it's going to be really nice to work with. In addition, it is soft, and I could definitely wear it around my face as a hat, or it would be durable enough to make into socks. I might actually make some shorty socks out of it. Kristen was saying that this wool is excellent for making socks. Now, it's not superwash, so you'd want to hand wash it in cool water. As you can see, this yarn is hand dyed in beautiful spring colors, lavender and mint green, and I really love these colors. I paid $32 for this ball of yarn, and I feel like that is reasonable considering that these sheep are pretty rare and the wool is a little bit challenging to spin. A couple of years ago, I got some baby doll Southdown roving from Kristen, and I sat down to spin it. And boy, it took me a little while to get the hang of spinning it, just because it has such a short staple. Here are a couple of mini rovings that Kristen sent me with my order. They are both natural colors. This one's white and this one is brown. They are both very smooshy. I think this brown one might even be a little softer than the white one, but they're both very, very soft and nice. Anyway, if I pull the roving apart and look at the staple length, here's the staple length. It's about 2 inches. So when you spin it, you have to put some good twist into it so that the singles will stay together. But if you want a fun cognitive challenge with your spinning, I would encourage you to get some baby doll Southdown roving and try it out. It really is a pleasure to work with. So yeah, I think this yarn, the price of this yarn was totally worth it. And that is a little bit about the baby doll Southdown sheep. And now on to the last sheep breed I'm going to talk about today. And these sheep are so adorable that they look like they might not even be real. On first glance, they might be mistaken for a well-crafted felting project. I'm talking about the Valais Blacknose sheep. This is a hardy breed of sheep originating in the mountains of the Valais region of Switzerland. In their native country, they're highly prized, much loved animals that are often seen being walked on leads by their farmers around the villages in Valais. Some are even allowed into restaurants. Thought to have existed since the 14th century, the Valais Blacknose officially was recognized as a distinct breed in 1962. These sheep reach typical weights of 150 to 300 pounds. Their most notable features are a black face, black floppy ears, and black knees surrounded by stringy, white, fluffy wool. They also typically have spiral horns. The body, head, and legs are all equally woolly, making for a very unique appearance. Looking at them just makes you want to cuddle up with them. Valais Blacknose sheep are a naturally docile, friendly breed of sheep with charming personalities. They like to be around people and will come right up to you to investigate and hang out. They love a cuddle and can even be trained to walk on a lead. The Valais Blacknose are a rare breed, and there are only a few thousand in the world. Most are in Switzerland, but there are a few in Germany and England. Even though they look cuddly and love hugs, they're a pretty tough breed. They've adapted well to the high Alps and graze on the steepest, rockiest slopes. As far as their wool, Valais Blacknose fleeces fall into the industrial category of carpet wool. Yes, this wool is coarse and not for the fiber artist whose philosophy is softer and finer is better. The micron count is in the upper 30s, making it probably more suitable for rugs and mattress stuffing than for sweaters. It would be way too itchy for making garments out of. But in thinking of creative ways to use this fiber, I think another great use would be for felting, and especially needle felting. Now, I was not able to find any Valais Blacknose yarn, probably because it would be more like rope or twine than the types of yarn that we would be used to working with. But I did find some raw fleece on Etsy, so I ordered that, and here it is. It came in this bag. This bag of fleece is 3.3 ounces. It's really lovely fleece. Again, it's not super fine and soft, but to my hands, it's not unpleasant. And it has that really good sheepy smell. This fleece hasn't been washed, so it has a little bit of dirt and some veggie matter in it, but it's not super dirty. In looking at it, you can see the pretty locks, and the crimping is easy to spot. You can also see that the staple length for this fleece is about 10 inches. I'm planning on washing this fleece and then carding it. Maybe I'll show that in a future video if you're interested in seeing it. Let me know if you're interested in seeing the process of washing this little fleece and then carding it to, comb out and smooth out the fibers or hairs. Leave a comment below if you want me to do a video on that. Anyway, after I wash and card it, I might use it for felting projects, or I might spin some of it up and try to think of some other creative uses for it. And that is a little bit about the Valais Blacknose sheep and its wool. Their unique appearance and friendly nature, together with their rarity, make them quite a conversation starter. So it's no surprise that they're often referred to as the world's cutest sheep. Well, that brings us to the end of today's show. I hope you liked finding out about some different sheep breeds based on their lovable appearance. Did you already know about the Kerry Hill, Baby Doll Southdown, and Valais Blacknose breeds? Have you ever spun or knit with or worked with their wool in any way? I'm always interested in your experiences with the topics I talk about, so let me know in the comment section below. Please also leave a comment if you have any questions about today's show, or if you have an idea for the show, for what you'd like to see on future episodes, or if you'd like to see a product tested. Leave your suggestions in the comment section. I always love to hear from you, and I appreciate your ideas and questions that stimulate new show topics. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today, and I'll see you in the next video. Now, for next week, I'm thinking about going back into the lab and testing out dryer balls. You know, those wool balls that you throw into the dryer, and they're supposed to decrease the drying time for your clothes, and they're supposed to reduce static electricity without having to use dryer sheets? Well, let's test out those claims and see if the scientific evidence ends up supporting them. So I hope you want to come back and see that. And until then, have a sparkly week.